A major development on the Hill this week for government IT modernization reform. Two formerly competing bills have joined forces. The IT Modernization Act and the Move IT Act will merge. The new bill, the Modernizing Government Technology Act of 2016, released by IT Subcommittee Chairman Will Hurd, could reach the floor of the House of Representatives as early as this week. Hurd sat down for an exclusive interview with Government Matters producer Colby Hochmuth at an Internet Security Alliance event on Capitol Hill.
Federal government spends $80 billion a year on IT procurement, buying, services and software and hardware, and 80% of that is on legacy system, meaning stuff that you and I would consider old and outdated, right? It's pretty outrageous. And if an agency saves money and they don't use that savings, they lose it in the next, fiscal cycle. That's crazy, and that doesn't give any incentive to save money. So here's what our bill did. Our bill said if you realize savings, if you're an agency, take Department of Interior, that savings you realize from moving into, let's say, the cloud or upgrading your infrastructure, you can put that in a working capital fund and have access to that for 3 years to do other modernization. Right, so that's the crux of this bill. Where the compromise came in is this bill actually does authorize a central fund as well at GSA. Now, we don't capitalize it because guess what? There's not $2 billion sitting somewhere that hasn't been used, right? But if these working capital funds that can be created at every agency, if after 3 years, if the money is not used, it goes back into this GSA fund, right? So that I think was the key piece. I like to call it a kind of a spoken wheel, a spoken hub idea. That was the real agreement that both sides came together from the competing ideas that were out there.
So the IT Modernization Act in its original form had a $3.1 billion price tag. The new version of this bill, as it stands, there's no price tag associated with that mega fund.
That's what makes it so beautiful, is that by changing the structure of how the government operates, you're actually saving the government money. Right? Everybody who's ever worked in the federal government knows the phrase, if you don't use it, you what? You lose it, right? And what this takes that incentive away, because if you don't use it, you can put it away and use it for 3 years to upgrade your IT systems. So I think the beauty in this is it's simple logic, and you don't need another capitalization or another appropriation because these agencies are already doing it. For example, 2 agencies, when they transitioned their digital infrastructure into the cloud, they saved $2 billion. Right? Those agencies aren't going to be able to use those funds. Now, under this bill, they would be able to do that, and they would be able to use that money in order to upgrade additional systems, thereby saving more money.
I want to talk about another compromise, FedRAMP reforms. They're lost in this version of the bill. Why is that?
We couldn't come to an agreement on some of the changes that needs to happen, to be frank. And we have an opportunity to move something, and the reality is this. We have a good bill. I think that would have made it better, but there was some opposition to that. And this is something that we can relook at, right? This is not the last thing that we're ever going to do, but if we can agree on 80%, let's move that 80% and try to figure out the details later. And honestly, this was just, it's a complex negotiation, and we made the decision that in order to move forward in a bipartisan fashion, let's work on that reform down the road, which I still plan to do, and we'll be holding hearings and shining a light on this problem in the future.
Federal CIO Tony Scott spent a lot of time this summer lobbying for that $3.1 billion fund. How involved was he in this process of the new bill?
Oh, absolutely. I consider Tony a friend. I think he has been, he's a jewel for our federal government, to be honest. He has brought a level of experience and sophistication to that CIO job that I think has been needed and has been fantastic. So we've been having conversations with him the whole time on this fix, on this agreement, and moving forward. So I know he is excited about the success that we had today and seeing this bill actually get into the president's desk.
What sort of a timeline are you hoping for? Do you think we can see this on the president's desk as early as next week?
Well, whether we get it to the president's desk next week, I'm not going to make any predictions on that. But here's the reality: this is significant procurement reform, right? And this is going to get off the House floor next week. Right? We talked to all the stakeholders in advance. We got an agreement, and everybody is committed to making this happen. The fact that we were able to have something this significant get through markup, and ultimately have multiple committees of jurisdiction to agree to move forward on this is a really big deal. And again, I believe my friends in the Senate are working the companion legislation, and so I'm hopeful. But this is something I'm pretty confident that before the current occupant of the White House leaves office, this is going to get signed into law.
And I want to ask you about the origin of this merger. Was there a certain point where you were working with your staff and you realized that a merger with the IT Modernization Act might be necessary for success?
So this was a collaborative effort, and guess what? By the way, in a pretty contentious environment, right? And to me, that's a sign that when you have really good pieces of legislation that actually gets things done and ensures that the federal government is going to be providing better services to the American people, we can all get on the same sheet of music. And we did that even though we're less than 60 days away from an election, which I think is a significant accomplishment as well.
And Congressman, you're fighting a tough re-election campaign back home. This is a pretty niche issue. Why is this so important to you?
Well, it's important because guess what? So I represent 29 counties from San Antonio to El Paso down to Eagle Pass. It takes me 10.5 hours to drive 80 miles an hour across the district, right? And 80 is the speed limit like most of the district. The reality is when you tell people, I don't care if you're in West Texas, South Texas, urban, environment, rural, the federal government is spending $80 billion a year, and 80% of that is on old stuff, they're immediately outraged. And when you tell them, hey, we're doing something about that, all right? Now, no one's going to hold a parade for IT procurement, right? It's not a sexy topic, but when people see that you're working to reduce the size and scope of the federal government and make it more responsive, because hey, if you use the tax dollars better and wiser, then guess what? We can stop sending so much up here to Washington, D.C., and everybody can get behind that. And so the reality is people back home, appreciate the fact that we're up here working hard, getting things done. I've been in Congress for 21 months, all right? And to get a significant piece of procurement reform like this done, is a signal back home to the great people I get to represent that, you sent me up here to make some changes, and we're doing it.
Congressman Hurd, thank you for your time.
Thank you.